The night had already stretched too long, and the tow truck driver, a seasoned, stoic man, toughened by years of late-night rescues and rough calls, was ready to wind down. Tired and longing for his bed, he received a call he wouldn't normally take. The insurance company representative on the other end asked him to tow a client's broken-down vehicle stranded about 15 miles out of town. The only reason he agreed to it, though exhausted, was because the final destination for the vehicle was a dealership just a few minutes from his own home. It seemed easy enough. Pick up the car, drop it at the dealership and make it home just before dawn. He agreed and prepared to hit the road, unaware that this call would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and how fragile the line between fear and heroism could be. He approached the spot indicated by the insurance company's instructions, rolling slowly up the deserted dark stretch of highway. The area was desolate, with only faint glimmers of moonlight cutting through the pitch-black night. The car he was sent to tow was parked on the shoulder, its hazard lights flashing intermittently like a distant SOS call. As he drew closer, something peculiar caught his attention. Another car was parked directly in front of the disabled vehicle, its lights off, its presence ominous. Standing by the cars were a young woman and a man, their figures faintly illuminated by the hazard light's red-orange glow. The woman was dressed up as if she'd been out for the night, with her long hair framing her tense expression. The man stood next to her, tall and imposing, dressed in a dark sweatshirt and dirty jeans. Sensing something unusual about their posture and proximity, the tow truck driver's guard rose as he parked and got out. As he stepped out of his truck, he greeted the woman with a straightforward, "Are you Lila?" She gave him a silent, tight nod, her gaze darting anxiously between him and the man beside her. Something in her expression seemed to beg for help without uttering a word. Before the driver could inquire further, the man interjected with a forceful, "Yeah, it's just some fuel problems. Just take it to the parking lot down the road and I'll fix it there." The driver's brow furrowed. The suggestion didn't sit well with him. That parking lot was farther down the highway and well outside town. He had only agreed to take this call because the car's official destination was the dealership, allowing him a straight shot home afterward. Changing the plan meant a lot of additional hassle, re-coordinating with the insurance company and a longer detour. Annoyed by the man's presumptive tone, the driver firmly replied, "No, the dealership is the best place. If it's a fuel issue, they'll fix it. That's covered under warranty." The man's face darkened, his mouth tightening in a show of hostility. His voice took on an aggressive edge as he spat out, "Look, just take it where I tell you and stop hassling." But the driver wasn't easily swayed, especially by an unknown man he didn't trust. With a calm defiance, he looked at the woman again and said, "Who's the insurer here? Lila, right? What do you want to do?" He turned to the woman, hoping she would choose the dealership and let him end this odd encounter. The driver's simple question cut through the tension like a knife, but the response he received took him aback. Lila, no longer standing beside the man, had moved to stand directly behind the driver. Her posture seemed closed and defensive. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to shield herself from something far worse than the cold night. Her face was etched with fear, her eyes silently pleading. In that instant, something clicked. The driver felt a wave of dread, a chilling realization that this man beside her was no friend. He turned back to her and asked with gravity, "Do you know this guy?" Lila's subtle, hesitant shake of her head confirmed his worst suspicions. A protectiveness surged within him as he processed the situation. The man, sensing the shift in power, took a step closer to Lila as if attempting to regain control. In response, the driver stepped in between them, creating a human shield that forced the man back. Angered, the stranger pushed against him, though his weight barely budged the driver's stance. The driver took a small step back to stabilize himself before pushing the man backward with a force that knocked him onto the asphalt. Without a second thought, he turned to Lila and urged her, "Get in the truck now!" She didn't hesitate. She darted to the passenger side and scrambled inside, locking the door behind her. The man picked himself up and glared at the driver, his breath heavy with rage. The driver kept his eyes locked on him, his heart pounding with adrenaline and fear, knowing he was in real danger. The driver's hand moved instinctively to his back pocket, where he remembered he had a small box cutter he'd been using for work that day. Seeing the motion, the man's gaze darted warily toward the driver's hand. Whatever he thought the driver was holding, it was enough to make him back off. The man glowered, offering a twisted smile, but retreated slowly, defeated. As he walked away, he muttered curses, turning once to stare before getting in his car and driving off. Only when the red tail lights disappeared did the driver's chest finally relax. Once back in the truck, the driver glanced at Lila, who had finally relaxed slightly. As they drove toward the dealership, she shakily recounted her ordeal. She explained how her car had broken down, and soon after the man had shown up, refusing to leave despite her telling him help was on the way. Terrified, she had been left standing on the roadside until the driver arrived. Her voice quivered with relief, and the driver's heart went out to her. As they reached the dealership, her parents were there, waiting and visibly relieved. After hearing what had happened, they gratefully handed the driver a small tip and thanked him profusely. As the driver watched Lila's family embrace her, he felt a mix of relief and bewilderment. Reflecting on the event later, he felt anything but triumphant. In his years on the job, he had dreamed of rescuing someone in need, of being the knight in shining armor who bravely saves the day. Yet the reality was something entirely different. He had felt vulnerable, and at that moment, protecting Lila had felt like a choice made out of necessity rather than valor. Instead of glory, he found himself filled with a deep sense of humility. True heroism, he realized, wasn't about feeling fearless. It was about overcoming fear to do what's right. And as he drove off, he hoped he'd never be put in such a situation again, but knew that if he were, he'd be ready to act.